As popular sites like Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube are becoming major sources of home entertainment, online video traffic is putting a tremendous strain on operator networks worldwide. Network operators are looking for innovative technologies to reduce the impact of over-the-top video on their networks to better manage the growing infrastructure and bandwidth costs. We will be hearing from Jason Hansen, CTO of Conway, a U.S. carrier who has deployed Qwilt's transparent caching solution to prepare his network for the future of online video.
The big problem that we're tackling today is and actually back in 2010 when it first started to emerge, was network congestion due to bandwidth constraints at the edge of our network. What was kind of emerging behind it was the increase in video traffic and video streaming, primarily Netflix, YouTube, those kinds of applications, and applications were driving that bandwidth congestion. What was really evident to us at that time was in mid-2010 when Netflix launched their all-you-can-eat streaming package for $7.99 is really when video traffic really started to peak heavily and start to outweigh the peer-to-peer traffic on our network. And because of that, we felt we were going to have to find some sort of solution to help manage this explosive growth in video streaming bandwidth. And we looked at several solutions that were out there in the marketplace. Not many of them had economies of scale. They either took up too much space. And so we tried to go ahead and we were looking at different solutions. But at the end of the day, in 2010, what we ended up with was dealing with the solutions the way we traditionally would have, which is do node splits, decombine our CMTS, go out into the marketplace, try to find more competitive pricing for bandwidth to add more bandwidth to our edge network to deal with the problems at the time. We used several criteria. The first and foremost, obviously, was price to maintain a good quality of service, but also maintain good rates for our consumers. The second piece was how much space did it take up in our facility. We had limited resources as far as the space in our facilities were concerned, so something that would take up an entire rack of space or a couple of racks of space was really not an option for us. And the third criteria, it really had to be as network invisible as possible. We didn't want to have anything impacting the flow of the traffic if there was a failure point. It was in early 2012 when I was browsing TechCrunch that I came across Qwilt. And they were featured on there in an article, talked about video caching, and it seemed like a good fit to the solution at the time because it met a lot of our criteria. We looked at some information on them, didn't take up a lot of rack space, was invisible to the network, and those were two of the biggest ones. Obviously we didn't know cost at the time, but it was one of those things that we wanted to explore. So we reached out to Qwilt and they got in touch with us, and that's kind of when our relationship started. When we first started to engage Qwilt on what we needed to do to get the process started in doing this, it was really pretty seamless. Dealing with our account team and the support team, they were able to go ahead and provide us the details we needed to get the box in place, to get the system in place, and relatively painless when it came to it. And that was a huge bonus for us as far as an operator was concerned, is because it didn't impact our network traffic and our users on a regular basis. It was very clear from the beginning that this was a good fit for us. The box itself was only 2U of rack space, which met one of the big criteria points we had. The other piece was that it was network invisible. We had to install a couple of optical taps to go ahead and mirror that traffic so Qwilt could see what was going on from the caching perspective, which was another real easy thing for us to implement. Throughout the entire process of just getting it deployed, it was very smooth. Support was great. Once we had it in place, we started acquisition and delivery on it in, I think, June, in the June time frame, and really have not had any problems at all from the get-go. The results that we were able to achieve with Qwilt were pretty phenomenal, especially when it comes to Netflix traffic. That was one of the big keys that we were after, because Netflix in 2011 occupied anywhere between 40 and 50% of our network traffic on a regular basis. So with the installation of Qwilt, we were most curious about how was that going to impact the Netflix traffic overall. And what we found is that of the network traffic, the video network traffic that exists on our plant, 44% of all the Netflix traffic that goes across our plant is being cached by Qwilt. So we've been real pleased with the results of Netflix and YouTube and Apple and some of these other video providers that are there that we're caching, but Netflix by far has been the greatest volume of cache traffic that we're dealing with today. User experience for us is really measured by how invisible was the product that we put in and how impactful it was to our consumers in that process, and does it generate calls to our call center. Overall, we met the criteria that we had set out to do, which was put something in place that was very invisible to the network, wouldn't have a failure point in the network. So we were successful there from that standpoint, and the consumers not being impacted by the implementation of the process. The second piece is we've not had any complaints or calls into our call center regarding the delivery mechanism of any of our video type traffics that are out there, from Netflix to YouTube to Apple, some of these others. We've not had any user complaints that we're aware of. The delivery of that traffic is delivered faster locally than it is across our backbone, which in essence basically gets the user the video faster, and they can start that process from watching Netflix movies to launching a YouTube video.